I've played tons of video games over a very wide spread of genres throughout my career on Twitch and YouTube, and the one genre that I neglected for a long time was role-playing games. And I was even more discriminate against Japanese role-playing games, and I do have my reasons. For those of you who don't know, sitting in front of a camera playing JRPGs can be incredibly boring, and it can be quite off-putting to put down the controller and come back a day later. Sometimes you kind of forget what you were doing or what you need to do next. That all changed once I played a few strong JRPGs with captivating storylines, wonderful combat mechanics, and from that point on, I was all for checking out the genre. So today, as per request by my good friend Lofter, who is a streamer and a YouTuber that I've known since the dawn of time, today I'm going to talk about the 10 best JRPGs I've played to date. Chrono Cross is an oddity because it's not particularly good, but in the terms of the experience I had playing it, it wasn't that bad. I think a lot of people were upset when they expected Chrono Trigger 2.0, and they got a rather strange, abstract offshoot that only managed to kind of touch on the concept that made Trigger so much fun. The pros? Well, the music. Yasunori Mitsuda did a phenomenal job on the soundtrack, and the story itself, while convoluted, does tend to flow fairly well, but it is very hard to understand what's going on. There's obviously many other RPGs that were better in the story department, but Chrono Cross is a fairly decent game for what it is. My chief complaint, or one of two, is that the combat system doesn't work as efficiently as the developers wanted it to. Now that might just be me, but at the end of the day, if you teach me about elemental affinities working in a rock, paper, scissors style, and then it doesn't work when I need it to, you're like, oh, well okay, fuck me I guess. My second complaint is that the character progression system is totally fuck-busted beyond recognition. There is no XP, right? The only chance you have of growing is by getting star levels at pre-scripted parts of the game, specifically boss fights. Now, I did do a series Slayer about this franchise, and if you want a more in-depth review of this game, as well as the franchise en masse, feel free to check it out. The link will be in the description below and at the end of this video. Final Fantasy IV was a solid game. If you're unfamiliar with the numbering conventions of Final Fantasy IV is what it's known as in Japan, but in America, we got Final Fantasy II, because by the time Final Fantasy IV was ready to be released to the world, we had only just ported Final Fantasy in the US. So for continuity's sake, Square released it as Final Fantasy II, and the same thing applies to Final Fantasy VI, which is Final Fantasy III in the United States. Now, I love Final Fantasy IV. It's a very charming game and I did enjoy it, but the main issue I had was that the story is so forgettable. I remember Cecil and some Dragoon people. I think his name was Cain. I think there was something about a spoony bard and a lady named Rydia who was a summoner, but without looking up a plot, I really couldn't tell you much about it. That's an issue. When you're providing people tons of exposition, it's very important that it is impactful so that people remember it, and in my case, Final Fantasy IV was lacking in that department. However, that being said, I had a blast playing it, and I think it was because it was the first time we encountered the ATB, or Active Time Battle system, which was different than the previous entries where we just had alternating turns. We have more magic, we have more balanced points in the story, grinding isn't as much of a priority, it's just a solid game and I think you should play it. I remember when this game came up, I was live on Twitch playing ActRaiser 2, and we were talking about the most difficult JRPGs that would annihilate your asshole, right? One of my viewers mentioned the 7th Saga, and I made a joke about beating it in a week.
One whole week, that's all it's gonna take. The 7th Saga week challenge, right?
I did beat it in a week, but it was a 15-hour grind session daily trying to get to that point. 7th Saga? It's not a joke, it's a damn good game with an incredible system on how your opponents can betray you at any time. As a little backstory, at the beginning of the game we can choose one of 7 people. We have Asuna Busy, who's an elf spellcaster, Valzu Sizer, a human white mage, Legius Rimul, a demonic black mage, Ulven Jess, a dwarf fighter, Lux Tizer, a Tetragen tank man, and Wilma Pellin, an alien fighter. The way it works is that you choose your main, and at some point you can have a teammate. In my case, I chose Ulvan. At Chapter 2, you can choose one companion, so I chose Valsu. From that point on, at any point, anybody in the game, anybody, can choose to fuck your day up, be it an enemy, one of the other characters, or your companion, and it's all based on RNG if it happens. And if you do play this, I always suggest staying at least 2 levels above your companion. Through and through, this game is a grind fest, but I had an absolute blast, and I think you will as well. Jumping to the Game Boy, Final Fantasy Adventure is a charming game that, in my opinion, is one of the best Game Boy games I've ever had the luxury of playing. While this game is called Final Fantasy Adventure, think of it as Secret of Mana Zero because that's what it is, Seiken Densetsu Final Fantasy Gaiden. Final Fantasy Adventure is the first game in the Mana series, and if you're curious, there's another franchise that had its roots on the Game Boy, the Final Fantasy Legend. Final Fantasy Legend is the start of the romancing Saga line of games, or Saga. I've never played them, so A, they won't be on this list, and B, I don't know how the fuck to pronounce it. Returning to the game we're talking about, though, we play as the hero, who is a prisoner of the Dark Lord. We get sprung from prison and we're told to go find Bogart, and from that point on, we keep meeting more and more people who guide us on the proper path to find the strongest sword ever and eventually defend the Tree of Mana against all enemies, foreign and domestic. A little military joke for you there. It's actually a quite riveting storyline, and I did enjoy it. Megami Tensei is Pokemon with demons. I say that again. Pokemon with demons. Based on a book from Aya Nishitani, Digital Devil's story Megami Tensei is the first game in the Shin Megami Tensei franchise. But unfortunately it was released solely on the Famicom, but good news, there's a translation patch. I know I said it's the first game, but there is one very oddly unrelated game for the MSX called Digital Devil's Story Monogatari, but it's borderline unplayable to me, so instead I focused on the Famicom one. We play as Akemi Nakajima, a student that is the literal reincarnation of Izanagi, who creates a computer program that summons demons. Which is a great idea, right? No, it's not. Because of Nakajima's stupidity, Lucifer comes out and brings his homies Loki and Set and releases tons of demons like Medusa, Hecate, and lesser beings like Minotaurs. Now our objective is to work with our girlfriend through this labyrinth down to Lucifer and kick him in the dick. But to do that, we need a team of dick-kicking demons to work with us. So what do? We run into the demons, and then we proceed to either A, fight them, B, talk to them, or C, bribe them. We need those demons to be on our side to defeat Lucifer, and there exists a system where we merge demons to create bigger and stronger demons. So this game is an absolutely fun time, and while it was more of a dungeon crawler than a traditional JRPG, it is still considered a JRPG, and I strongly recommend it. This is one of my favorite games on the Genesis period. Shining in the Darkness is a gorgeous game. Everything possible about it is perfect. The dungeons are awesome, the music is great, the art is god tier, and I had a blast playing this. For anyone who's curious, this is the start of the Shining franchise, the same franchise as Shining Force, and yes, there are tons of games in this franchise, roughly 38 if I recall. It reminds me a lot of Wizardry, but it's not as rigid as Wizardry, if that makes sense. We play as a character in the Kingdom of Thornwood, and our dad has disappeared, which nobody gives a shit about. But hey, the king's daughter, she disappeared too, and that matters. So now we're on a quest to find both of them. They've been kidnapped by the big bad guy Dark Soul, and our job is to simply find them and bring peace to the kingdom. We do that by traveling through multiple floors, working our way to the bottom and kicking the shit out of Dark Soul. Outside of the obvious things, there are certain aspects of the game that I enjoyed. Particularly the economy of our equipment. This is something that I wish so many more games used. If we buy something, we can immediately sell the older equipment to offset the cost. Object A is expensive, we are equipped with Object B. Go to sell B, they say, hey, would you like to sell this to pay for A? Absolutely. Go on with your life. None of this irrelevant bloat in our inventory. It's stupid. Oh, by the way, this is also the first game I whipped out graph paper for, which made this tremendously fun. To see all of those levels drawn out, it's so cool, and I look forward to checking out more dungeon crawlers during my career. There were so many franchises out there: Alundra, Arctolad, Azure Dreams, Chrono Cross, Dragon Warrior, Digimon World, Grandia, Suikoden, Legend of Legaia, Lunar, Langris, or Parasite Eve, Persona, The Legend of Dragoon, which I'm currently playing on my stream, wink wink, and more. But the one franchise that blew me out of the water consistently was Wild Arms. Wild Arms just feels right for what it is. Every character you utilize is special, unlike other RPGs where you have clear-cut roles: the DPS, the tank, the magic, the healer, whatever. Each of the characters in Wild Arms feel like they could survive on their own if the other roles fell during combat. Now, I did cover this in my 10 PS1 games you should play, and I put it there for a reason. It's just a great game. This was the first JRPG I knowingly played, and it was the third game I ever played on my stream, fun fact. In fact, the day that I made affiliate on Twitch, I was playing this, but in the past, I played this on the iPhone when I was stationed in Kunsan Air Base, Republic of Korea. Now, the version I played was the Dawn of Souls variants. It wasn't until I started streaming where I played the NES version. Now, obviously, the NES version has tons of faults in it, right? Namely, spells that are supposed to work, and they don't, like Nuke. But even despite that, for what Final Fantasy was and what it created, it was a magnificent example of what future JRPGs should be. And if you're looking for a great entry-level JRPG on the NES, then this is one that I would suggest. To me, it's a lot like Breath of Fire, except Breath of Fire on the Super Nintendo holds your hand just a little bit more. This is a JRPG, believe it or not. I know it plays more like an adventure RPG, but at the end of the day, it's a JRPG at its core. You're still building stats, you're still taking on a legendary enemy of legend, the whole world sits on your shoulder, the usual. Chrono Trigger to me is an exemplary game on the Super Nintendo that featured a dream team of experts in the field, and if you haven't taken the time to play it, you should. I don't want to describe it too much in depth because I do want you to experience this on your own time. It's just good. Trust me, it's a good time. To me, there is no other game that could possibly top this, and no, I hold no nostalgia for it. I played this as an adult, and in my opinion, it is not only the greatest game on the Super Nintendo, it is truly the golden standard of JRPGs on the Super Nintendo. To have so many character opportunities, so many moments that take you away from the monotony, you really have to play it to understand. The music is perfect, the characters are excellent, you can fucking suplex a train. You just constantly feel involved in what the game has to offer, and to me, there's been no other games that have come remotely close to providing me with that feeling, and as an adult, that's a rarity. I'm at that age where I realize why my dad never said that he was proud of me. Just nothing surprises me anymore, right? Final Fantasy III, it did surprise me. So those are my top 10 JRPGs that I've played, and who knows, maybe in a few years I can look back and update this list as I continue to explore retro gaming. JRPGs are fun. I never thought I would say it, but they are fun. And it always boils down to the mechanics and how companies would make their games stand out in comparison to the established norm. What are your favorite JRPGs? I'd love to add them to my list of games to check out. If you get a chance, hit that thumbs up or else you're a spoony bard, right? As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes, Fortefyre out.